Hello everybody and welcome. We are smack bang in the middle of the championship series. I can barely speak. I'm excited. Socials will do the work. Hashtag NBL Overtime to kickstart the conversation. It's all happening. The championship series is tied at 1 apiece. Xavier Cooks, the best player in the NBL, is heading to the NBA, and there's a hell of a lot more to talk about. Homicide in the house. How you doing, man?
Man, I was bringing a broom into this room. I thought I was at least, but I had to park the broom and leave it at the house.
All right.
It was that close.
Good, and you've already fired something up. I do see some comments you've made in News Court right around the nation as well. We'll get to that very soon as well. Liam Santamaria, you've been on that junket to New Zealand. You've been on fire, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. What else would we have expected? Then after a season like that, we deserve a series like this.
I'll tell you what, I've been banging on about home court advantage not mattering for 2 years, and here we are. Neither of these teams have been able to win at home. Is that going to change this weekend? Well, let's find out in a couple of days' time. But let's start with what happened on the weekend, and let's start with what happened in Game 2. It's a little fresher. New Zealand were brilliant in Game 1. They were outstanding, and a lot of the people expected Homicide, Xavier Cooks under that injury cloud, Walton Jr. likewise, them to roll on in. But that first quarter from Sydney was exceptional.
My biggest thing again was, we talked about it Game 1, the type of defense they were going to play. That drop defense, you know, he dissected that defense Game 1, but Game 2, they get that out of here, let's play aggressive, and they were aggressive in that one, and that was the difference in the game right there. Refused to lose. I mean, it was impressive. I was really, it was heroic. That's the word I'm going to use, because 9 minutes, 2 points, Xavier Cooks. Derek Walton Jr. barely played. And for them to win without their two key players, that shows the desire and the depth, and everybody else stepped up. That was heroic. Because, look, they lose that, this thing is over on Friday.
Yeah.
And for them, Kawhi Noy, best game of his career.
Yep.
Best game of his career. It was a beautiful thing to watch if you're a Sydney Kings fan, because everybody else would be watching like, at some point, New Zealand's going to kick into gear, figure out the zone, take advantage of it, and this thing, Sydney's not going to be able to keep this thing up. And Justin, oh my God.
Well, it's one of the best wins,
it's
legitimately.
It's a shame Justin Simon was not even in consideration for defensive
It's
player
ridiculous.
after that.
It's ridiculous.
It might not be a shame, because this is the reason he's using his motivation to dominate that game.
Before we zero in a little bit on how amazing that performance was from Justin Simon, I'm going to go a little bit further. That is the most impressive, gutsiest win I've ever seen in the NBL. It might be the most impressive, gutsiest win ever in NBL history. I've been reaching out to some people who've been watching the league that's over the course of the entire 40 whatever many years, and no one's presented something better.
Okay.
When you really break it down, you're 1-0 down in the grand final series, and you're on the road. If you go 2-zip down, it's basically over, right? Nobody has ever come back from that. And you lose your two best, you don't just lose some guys, you lose your two best players, who are two of the best players in the league. One's the league MVP, one's an all-league point guard, and you still manage to get that done in the way that they did, with other guys stepping up. That was unbelievably impressive. From the guys on the floor, the Jordan Hunters and the Angus Glovers and the Quat Noys and, of course, Justin Simon, but that coaching staff, that entire organisation, like, man, you must be feeling amazing, because that was an all-time performance.
Hashtag NBL Overtime. If you can honestly think of a better performance in NBL history, hit us up at NBL, hashtag NBL Overtime, and we will write back, you're lying. Because I'm 100% with you. 100% with you. The best player in the league. Yep. The player who, I think, in Derek Walton Jr., who could be the best player in the league if, in fact, he had to be.
Right.
He goes through. It seems like he's on cruise control on a number of occasions. Unbelievable. And not only did they win, they just belted them.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't really ever in doubt. That first quarter was outstanding. New Zealand gave that run in the second quarter. The whole second half was dominated by the Sydney Kings, and the third quarter was dominated by the third import, who is the perfect import based on what this team needed coming into the year. I'm with you, Liam, and it just sets up what is going to be a remarkable weekend ahead. Unbelievable.
And you're bang on about Justin Simon.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about Justin Simon, because I would say he would be leading the vote right now for Grand Final MVP, Larry Sangstock medalist. What he did here in this third quarter, these 3 consecutive steals when it was a contest. Look, it was a 4-point game at the start of the third quarter, and he just completely turned it on his head. Bang, 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 and all of a sudden the Kings have the ascendancy. Yes, was that the turning point in that game? Absolutely. Was it the turning point in the series overall when we come back and look at it after the fact? Well, we're going to have to wait and see.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Hang on, before you go any further,
Not a chance.
What on?
You want me to wait, or you want me to go?
No, don't wait.
You go.
Okay, cool. Here's the reality of the situation. These 5 days right now, right? Was today Sunday day 1, Monday, Friday, 5 days. We'll see what is the injury cloud. Is it clearer, or will those 2 gentlemen still be injured? Because they're going to need them. I do not think if this unit that won today, Sunday, will have to do it in a best-of-3 series, they won't win. They will not win. If you're relying on that bench without Cooks and Derek Walton Jr., if they are injured the way they were, right? It's not that quick of a turnaround because you have this space right now, maybe 5 days. So it'll be interesting to see how they look on Friday, because it's going to take 100% from Derek Walton Jr. It's going to take 100% from the MVP, Xavier Cooks, and everybody else to beat this New Zealand Breakers team. They're there for a reason. Make no mistake.
Absolutely.
And they played their worst. That was their worst performance. They couldn't figure out the zone. How to beat a zone? They were right in their wrongs. Now it's a best-of-3 series. I'm still sticking with New Zealand.
Now, before you go any further, both of you, if you have a look at that Justin Simon performance, it's quite interesting when you look at what's happened in the NBL in recent times. It has been led by a guy, and not necessarily just in a grand final series, but you look at that, Justin Simon, the contagious defence and the energy. Yeah. Antonio's Cleveland has done it a number of occasions for first Illawarra, then the Adelaide 36ers in smaller doses this year. Yeah. You look at Tajir McCall, similar type of thing. It's amazing how in the NBL, be it the 40-minute game and the contagious energy defensively, which turns into a match-winning quarter. That third quarter, I think, has swung this series. And there are big question marks over Cooks and Walton Jr. But I think Walton Jr., I've never seen, now you were right there watching him, I've never seen a cramp like that in the history of sport.
Yeah.
So for him to be able to get on a plane and give it a crack on Sunday, no real surprise. But the extra 5 days, my belief, is going to be okay. Cooks is a whole different situation. But that third quarter from Justin Simon, I think, turned the series back to Sydney Kings.
Yeah, and you go back, you talk about those guys at Cleveland and McCall and the like, but let's talk about it in a grand final context.
True.
You go back to Damian Martin, especially in 2016, and it was against the Breakers, where Cedric Jackson was the key to that series. If Cedric Jackson, he's a 2-time grand final MVP, if he's able to do his thing in this series, New Zealand's going to win. Well, Damo averaged 5 points per game in that series and was the Larry Sangstock medalist because he shut...
Unbelievable. Still one of the most amazing stats in the history of basketball.
And it was a no-brainer decision.
Yeah, he dominated.
Because he shut him down. And he kept him scoreless in the deciding Game 3. And that's what... Because that's a similar situation to this, because we can talk Cooks and Walton Jr. and Barry Brown as much as we want. For me, Will McDowell-White is the key to this series. And so what Simon is doing and that team with the coverages and the like is the key. And the difference between Will McDowell-White from Game 1 to Game 2, I think, was the key difference. And Simon was the guy that was the key factor here.
There's the numbers, Will McDowell-White, who we made a big, not just us, but everyone made a huge point of talking about going into Game 1. And he was dominant. He did whatever he wanted in the 4 quarters in Sydney on Friday night. Game 2, coincidentally, a lot of it around Justin Simon. I ask you this, Homicide, I have a slight concern, and Will McDowell-White's probably the guy that has to lead this. New Zealand's ability in first quarters in massive games. Now, against Tasmania, they got away with it, right? Game 3, they're rolling on in. They got belted in Game 2. Tassie came ready to play. Brown Jr. came off the bench and changed the game. They end up getting into the championship series and winning that game. Now, Sydney are better than Tassie. That's quite obvious and has been for a little while. The very fact is you can't have slow starts on your home floor to dig yourself out of holes when you've got a championship at the reckoning. And that's what happened again on Sunday. While they got themselves into it, the energy they had to use to get back into it essentially meant they couldn't handle what Sydney had for them after half-time. Regardless of what happens in Friday or on Friday in Sydney, they can't come out sluggish at home on Sunday in front of their adoring crowd.
They won't. It's just one game.
It's not. It's 2 games now. It happened against Tassie as well.
It's 1-1.
Okay. I don't disagree with that point.
All they got to do is, if Justin Simon is defending Will McDowell White in Game 3 when they start, which he will, right? Because they were successful doing that. Don't bring the ball up. Give it to somebody else, Liapa, whoever. Get it on the second side of the offense and go from there. That ain't hard to do. It is hard for a guy like, whoever he's guarding. That's like Rupe when he's defending you, bringing the ball up. You gonna bring the ball up on him? No. Give it to the off guard. Meet you down there. That was dope about the Lakers with the triangle offense. Anybody could initiate the offense when there's a tough on-ball defender on your premier guard. Here, bring it up. Catch on the other side. Now let's work. That's what you do. They will adjust. They're gonna watch film just like Sydney did. Like, look at how bad we were. Throwing the ball out of bounds, not even catching the ball. These were preseason type of turnovers they were having. Right in your wrongs, watch the film, let's be better. You think you're gonna see that team? You think you're gonna see that team on Friday? Did we all think we were gonna see the Sydney Kings team that we saw Friday on Sunday? Chess, Game 3. We're going to adjust and we're going to be better.
So let's talk more about those adjustments, right? So Halls has said on NBL today, maybe they should look at bringing Barry Brown Jr., starting him, so that make it tough on Justin Simon. Who do you guard? Maybe that frees up Will McDowell White. I think they might look at that potentially with Isaiah Liafa and bring Repair off the bench. Or bring Tom Abercrombie off the bench and just add another ball handler into that mix, but more with Liafa, I think, maybe. Keep Brown Jr. off the bench, we'll see. But the adjustments from the Kings into Game 2, I was fascinated to watch because, as you said in the lead up to the series, if they defend the pick and roll with the drop coverage against McDowell White, they'll lose. And it played out that way in Game 1. Coming into Game 2, they go, no. Justin, with you, we're not changing that. You just need to crawl into the ball. To use that coverage effectively, there needs to be pressure on the ball. You need to make it harder for him. Be impactful in that way. Make yourself harder to screen. So they didn't change that coverage with Simon. With Galloway, who's the other primary defender on McDowell White, they did. They said, hey, you slip under. We'll see if he wants to knock down threes against your length. So because they didn't change the actual coverage with McDowell White, now the onus is on the Breakers, I think, to say, all right, how do we find other ways to try to get Will in those advantageous situations to make reads and make plays?
Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. We are set for an absolute huge weekend. We did allude to it earlier. The Kings bench and the depth of both of these teams have stood up at different times over the course of the season. It's a winner championship at any level around the world. You need to have fairly good players coming off the bench or ready to jump up. Angus Glover's been really good all year. Quatnoy Homicide, as you touched on, his aggressiveness off the bench, by far his best game. And Geordie Hunter has had a sneaky good season and had a great Game 1 and brought the energy. Galloway, of course, is great to see, but Quatnoy, again, you mentioned it, Homicide, you mentioned the fact that if Walton Jr. and Cooks aren't ready to go, it makes it so much tougher. But these guys stood up in the eye of adversity on the road in a must-win game.
Yeah, very impressive. I commend that bench. It was on them, and they performed at both ends. They got stops, they got key buckets, they did it by committee. They shared the ball. Like, it was beautiful to watch without your key players, as we said earlier, them step up consistently throughout the whole game. They took the hits when New Zealand came back and brought it within 2 early. They took the hits and they kept going. And, credit to them. You got to give credit where credit's due. However, I do not think if that's the situation, in a best-of-3 series that they could continue that, because this team over here is fully loaded and healthy. I'll choose health any day.
I will give a shout out to Sean Bruce, who I didn't mention, but he has done this over and over again. Did it last year in a championship series as well.
Sean Bruce, big shot.
Huge.
Late. Angus Glover, big shot late. Glover, every time he was coming off, he was having issues with his hamstring that he was trying to get right. Sean Bruce, every time in a timeout, he was swigging the pickle juice. These guys had to play a bigger role. Hunter, Kawatnoy, Jalen Galloway. Man, I could not be more impressed with what that whole group did on Sunday.
What are you hearing on Cooks and Walton Jr.? Anything?
No, I think they'll be right. Cramp, you got 3 or 4 days now to kind of loosen that up and get that good. Cooks was the kind of double corky on the inside of the thigh, right? That's going to still hurt a bit, but it's not like they've got a grade 1 hamstring strain or anything like that. I think they'll be good to go.
Who wins the series from here?
Breakers.
Breakers.
Kings. Let's get to a break. Xavier Cooks, he's going to do his work here, that he's going to the NBA. We'll touch on that next, right here on NBL Overtime.
Xavier Cooks having a night out.
Yes, sir. We see you, Xavier Cooks. He goes straight at the big boys. Caught that in the grill there. Just a hellacious dunk.
Geez, he's been all sorts of MVP caliber again tonight.
The MVP from the Sydney Kings, Xavier Cooks.
He's the best player in the NBL, and he's now heading to Washington once this Champions Series is done and dusted. A lot's been made of it in the last probably 3 or 4 months in particular, as he went to that whole new level. It kick-started All-NBL second team last year, a grand final MVP, and now he is headed to the Washington Wizards. And boys, it's a continual conversation about the pathway and where this league is at, and it's continually shown each and every year in the last 3 or 4 that if you play well, and in the case of Xavier Cooks, dominate the league, you knock on the door for long enough, you get an opportunity, and it's great to finally come to a realisation he's dreamed that he's had for, well, his entire life now.
It's fantastic to see, and you're right. He's had a fantastic, 12, 13 months, something like that. Grand Final MVP here, New Zealand League, MVP, comes back here in superior form and just destroys the competition. Best player on the best team, and it's deserving. Look at that. Look at that body of work in the last year. That's just a man possessed and focused. And it's great to see that he's broken through. Congratulations to him.
Yeah, and congratulations to the Kings as well, because when they signed Jayshawn Tate out of Belgium, they said, we know you want to be an NBA player. We are the team to help get you there. This is the league to help get you there. And they said the same thing to Xavier Cooks, who was injured when he first came to the Kings. Prior to that, he was like, I'm not sure about coming to the league. They were like, listen, we're going to help get you to the NBA. And that's what's happened now. A lot of it is those guys. They're at that level and they're hungry and they're doing all the work that you're talking about. But the league and that club as well are putting in place what you need to get that done. And I can't wait to watch him out there, man. Like, how good is it when Jock goes over and Jack White, and now we're going to see Xavier Cooks throwing down some of those hellacious dunks on the NBA hardwood.
And the guys that you mentioned, and the ones we all speak about, who have been in the NBL and have played major roles for their teams, have gone over. Jayshawn Tate. Now, he's had some injuries this year, went over and played really well, and is a key piece of the Houston Rockets. We know about Gideon LaMelo Ball. They've been able to go over. Shout out to LaMelo Ball with the ankle injury. Let's hope you get right as soon as possible. You have a look at Jock Landale, who's now on a very good Phoenix Suns team and is doing his thing, right? Jack White working his way, went to Summer League last year, was dominant, now working his way at a very good organisation. So it's not as simple as like, you play well, you get a little NBA crack, it goes on the CV, you sit on the bench, you watch the best league in the world from the best. It's not that. These guys go from here to over there. Torrey Craig's been doing it in very good teams. It's a continual conversation that these guys go from here, earn a crack, and play good minutes in good teams. And I expect Xavier Cooks to go to the Wizards and do the exact same thing.
And this is why Remember, think a couple years ago when everybody used to laugh when I said it. It ain't a cupcake league. And I really wanted people to understand the true meaning behind that. This ain't an easy league to just come in and think, I could just come in, rock up, and average 20 and dominate. Yeah. It just doesn't happen. This literally is, we say it all the time because it's true. It's a world-class league. Going all the days, these things, I sound like a broken record, but it's true. Going all the days where you feel you have to only go to Europe to get a shot to go to the league. NBL is the right pathway, man. Bring your talents here. If you can dominate the competition, you will be going to the NBA. It's a fact.
We're getting to a point as well, which and you and I being hardcore basketball nerds for the majority of our 40 years on this planet, we're to a point now where if you're in the NBA, you may miss the Boomers. And that's something that we never thought. And look, that's how the best powerhouse nations outside the USA in the world, the teams that continually and consistently challenge for medals at World Cups or Olympic Games, which we are now in that absolute conversation, we're going to have guys in the NBA who don't make the Boomer squad. Xavier Cooks will be in the World Cup. Now, what it means in the NBA, I don't know exactly in this off-season, but Xavier Cooks has forced his way into that, should be in the team. I was trying to rack my brain. He's never played senior basketball for Australia, has he?
He was going to. He was on the team.
He was on the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and then, again, that's that conversation we have because the World Cup's not far away and we are top 3 team and nation in the world. But Xavier Cooks, we spoke, you got it. You got about 25 scouts here to come and watch you, and in the end, I'm not sure if you had to pick teams or where it all sort of sat, but I'm sure there was a number of teams vying for that signature.
Yeah, massive congratulations.
Yeah.
It's an all-round great story for him and his family, the club, the league, everybody. What do you think it means for the grand final series? The fact that he knows as soon as this thing wraps, he's going over to live out his dream in the NBA. Does it take an edge off at all, do you think, in these last 3 games?
Here's what I honestly believe. Xavier Cooks is an old school type of player, playing in a new school era. He doesn't know how to play 50%. He's going all out. 100%. To have that NBA deal, you know the only thing he's thinking? I now have that security, so I could really continue to go full throttle over here. I want to leave here a back-to-back champion, and I want to be grand final MVP. Then I'll go about my business. That's already sorted. That's the hard part. Now I can focus all my energy, as I was, on what's in front of me. That's how he is.
I'm with you. It might make
thinking about a
minuscule difference. You know the only difference?
What you think he's thinking?
No, I'm thinking the only thing that makes any difference to this conversation is at the end of it, right? Either his celebrations or his commiserations are going to be cut short because you're jumping on a plane. I don't think it makes one iota to difference to the way that he plays his basketball in the next 3 games or 2 games. Hashtag NBL Overtime. Quick break. Wherever you might be, get involved. Do it. There he is, the #1 student from the Liam Santamaria Dance School.
Oh, come on.
What?
It's true, it's true.
Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. Well, there are going to be people dancing in Sydney on Friday night and in New Zealand on Sunday as well as this championship series continues. All right, you ready for this?
Let's do it.
I'm going to hit him with a tough one early because you asked us. Do you think the NBA has changed Xavier Cooks' mindset for the remainder of this series?
I think...
Yes or no?
Yes.
Would you re-sign Josh Majette if you're a jack jumper?
Yes.
Would you have Will McDowell-White in the Boomers team over Matthew Dellavedova?
Yes.
Will Keanu Pinder be in Sydney next year?
Maybe.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Will Keanu Pinder be in Sydney? Yes or no?
No.
Has Geordie Hunter had a better championship series than Derek Pardon?
Yes.
Will Antonio Cleveland be in the NBL next year?
Yes.
In Adelaide?
Yes.
Okay. Hashtag NBL Overtime to get involved. This is huge. Are you going to Sydney?
You know something about Antonio Cleveland we don't?
No, I'm just asking. Just simply asking a question. That's what I do.
No, you don't.
Hey, you going to Sydney on Friday night?
Yes, sir.
You going?
I'll be back in the suite.
Woo-hoo! You going to New Zealand Sunday? You building those frequent flyer points?
Let's go, baby.
I like it. Who wins Friday?
Breakers.
So it's going 4 only in your mind?
Yes.
Same as you.
Breakers. I said
Okay.
I said 5.
Sydney and 5. Hashtag NBL Overtime.
Breakers
We're
and
getting
5.
out of here. You'll get at NBL. Hit us up. Championship Series. I can barely sleep. I'm so excited. See you Friday.